I played through and beat Bioshock 1 last night. Like I've been streaming it for about a week, and I beat Bioshock 2. Sorry, Bioshock 1 last night. And that game just completely, like, it's well known, so I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. That game just completely falls apart in the last 3 levels. It just absolutely, completely falls to pieces.
So I
Every
know.
single part of it, the story, the level design, the fucking gameplay, it just turns to shit.
Okay, so yeah, this has been it's come up a couple times, but now that I guess it's fresh in your brain, um, you're if you're saying it in the last 3 levels specifically, that's after the twist.
The twist is so the level that contains the big twist is not great, right? It's definitely not as good as the levels preceding it. But everything in Bioshock 1 from twist forward is terrible.
Mm.
Is legitimately awful. And the final boss fight is right there next to Arkham Joker in terms of, like, that whole generation's boss fights were awful.
Yeah, I think like it's one of those ones where forever it's been like a situation we've talked about where you're like you pull the rug out and then it's like, oh, okay, and where's this going? And then it kind of just it peters out, but like the twist itself, I feel like I could have accepted it if it worked into, I guess, like a better actual conclusion, you know.
Mm. Oh yeah, the
um
ending is, like, hilarious.
and but then it's also one of these stories where I'm like, I don't know what I would have done if it were me.
So more than anything, you get there and you can just feel the game getting ready to be over. And then you meet Andrew Ryan, and then the game keeps going, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
this really feels like it didn't need to keep going. It feels like that was going to be the end of the game, actually. Because then you go on to, like, do, like, a fucking annoying escort mission and a terrible boss fight, and just all the enemies have their health values double for some reason. It's and it's not harder, it's just more tedious because you have to shoot more than a full clip of ammunition into them to kill them.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think too, like, um you kind of go, because like Andrew at that point, he's still like the most compelling, interesting character, and then you
Yeah,
have to kind of
easy.
replace that with now, like, Twisted Atlas, which is
uh
nowhere near as interesting.
like, it's really fascinating because, like, you're talking to Andrew Ryan the whole time, and he's like, man, it's the market, bro, and he's like crazy, but he's like
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to Fontaine, and he's like, I'm evil, I'm a gangster, I want money, I'm gonna kill yous. And it's like, oh, cool. Like, that's not interesting at all. Like,
Yeah,
at
it was
all.
just like I forget a bunch, but I do kind of recall there's just like, you know, you kill the villain who you were expecting to have an interesting conversation or monologue perhaps with, and now you've got a Snoke to deal
Yeah,
with.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
100% easy. And then I loaded up Bioshock 2 like 5 minutes after I stopped my stream to be like, "Well, I remember Bioshock 2, people didn't like it as much, or, and I loaded up and I'm like, oh, wow. Everything about the way the game feels and plays is like 10 times better.
Mm.
Like, not having to switch hands for your fucking gun and your plasmid, and the general movement and the general aiming is much better. Like, it's a huge improvement. And I feel like that didn't get enough credit back in the day.
Um, although it from what I remember too, though, is like it was not including the multiplayer, though, which was completely developed by someone else and feels completely different.
What multiplayer?
There was Bioshock 2 multiplayer.
What? You sure? You sound like those people that try and convince me that Dead Space 2 had multiplayer or Metroid Prime
Okay.
2 had a multiplayer.
Okay. Well, hey. I will. Metroid Prime
Uh-huh. Yeah,
2.
I knew that would get your goat. I knew it.
It wasn't great, but it was there. It showed up. It was present.
Man,
It
that
sure
Dead
was a
Space 2
mode.
multiplayer is easily the worst of the pick. It was bad. Oh, it was not good.
Yeah, that was but that was the era when devs were just like, we must release a competitive FPS multiplayer game. This is the hot thing right now, and it
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
matter if you have to get another studio to do it in 5 months. Go do it.
well that wasn't even the thing. It was the we need to give people a reason to keep the game after they beat it in a weekend.
Hmm.
Um and you know what? I look back on that era, and particularly with the hindsight of the 7th gen, right? And how the 7th gen was awful. And I'm like, the problem wasn't single player experiences are dying, something I have heard literally every year I have covered this industry. It was the games you guys are releasing aren't good enough that people want to keep them and play them again in the future. Like
With the
Arkham Asylum is not a game that I saw 100 used copies of at GameStop, because Arkham Asylum was like a fucking certified classic the day it came out.
There was also the issue too of the full price though release for a lot of that, with no proper like indie market or like half price market. Like you couldn't really release things of smaller sizes up until more recent generations.
Last of Us 1 had gold multiplayer. To the point where if that Last of Us 2 multiplayer ever comes out, I would play it easy. Uh,
Mm.
but the
Um,
other thing about playing. Oh, sorry, after you.
no, I was just gonna say that like like in the 360 era, when you had your PSN games and shit like that, it was basically like there was two sizes of game that you were allowed to make, and
Yeah.
anything that would like be in between that should cost perhaps something that would be like a 30 or a $40 game just couldn't find a market, and so instead you had to tack on fake value, and all that shit. So anyway, whatever. Yeah.
The other thing about going through Bioshock 1, which I want to say came out in 2007, was that you can look at a game like that and you can start to understand why people got so crazy about Dark Souls a few years later, specifically the difficulty and obtuseness of Dark Souls a few years later. Because Bioshock 1 is a game that, up until unironically the last 5 minutes of the game, was still flashing helpful tips such as loot dead bodies for
Mm-hmm.
ammunition, has a arrow at the top of the screen that tells you where every single thing you need to do. All items are screaming glowing gold if you need to pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like just nonstop. Like to the point where I had there was a point where I got trapped in a series of menus because I was trying to look at the map, but what it thought I wanted to do was hit the "what's this" button, looking at a vending machine in the last level of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I wanted to know what the vending machine was in the last level of the game. Um, it is Bioshock One is a theme park. Like the levels look open, but they're not. They're actually very linear. Um, it uh, it's just it's a fucking blast from the past in terms of like, oh yeah, they made game after game after game after game of like just hold your hand to the absolute nth degree, which I think Call of Duty went to too far, in
Well,
which Call of Duty has the big fat fucking icon above a character's head that says follow.
yeah, I think about it as the design that's born from the dude who's got his music blasting behind him, the sound of the game is off, and he's alt tabbing his way through this single player adventure and whatever matches of Modern Warfare are up on on a second
Yeah.
screen, and there's a baby crying right over there in the next room. That person needs the design of the follow arrow, glowing item, get it. That's what I'm imagining of that era.
There was a lot of in that time period of like people that are just like, yeah, I don't have the sound on in any game. I was just
Mm-hmm,
playing
mm-hmm.
metal or
Just playing my
rap
music,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing my music, and I always interpreted that in two ways. One, there's a certain percentage of people who, no matter how much they play games, they don't give a fuck about the game. The game is there to occupy their time or be an excuse to hang out with their friends, and those people will never be helped. Right? There's nothing to be done.
Well,
And the
it
other
serves a
one is
different
like,
purpose.
right. And the other one was like, man, you guys really aren't doing a great job with your fucking sound departments. That like a certain percentage of the people is just going, yeah, I'm just gonna turn this completely off. I don't give a shit about the music. Who needs it? Who fucking cares?
Yeah, and so Demons was probably just a like vast and violent departure from a lot of that at the time.
Yeah.
And then word of mouth spread.
Like one of the things that I remember playing Dark Souls 1 in 2009 was, oh cool. When I started a second character, you just walk past the messages on the floor that tutorialize you and just don't have to do it.
Right, right.
You don't have to do like to me the absolute worst thing that kills a replay for a game is a like 45-minute to an hour introductory sequence before you're allowed to play the game for real.
Mm-hmm. Or you
Like
can't press start.
Resident Evil Village recently is the one that probably does it the worst. Like it's like 40 minutes before you're able to actually play the game, and it's on replay. It sucks.
Booting up
Because you're
Mass
just
Effect. I just to check the settings and everything. Like you cannot press start to skip that opening cutscene. It's
nope.
you must watch it. You must sit here and watch what we've done.
It's very important that you hear the three guys talk over the shot of the Earth, and then do 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 do, and you get the title crawl. No matter how many times you're trying to test it for the fucking stream or what your character looks like, or going to character creation. But yeah, no, Bioshock 1 is good, but man, it is the 7th gen game. And I also finding out that like parts of Bioshock 1 were like retroactively made worse by the Bioshock Infinite DLC sucks.
For me, if I have to pick the quintessential, for me it's Assassin's Creed is the 7th gen game.
Which one?
1.
No.
No?
Nah, it's 3. It's Brotherhood rather.
I mean, like awkward horse mounting and the climbing, where it's like we just took and we updated the Prince of Persia system a bit. The tower system and the default Ubi system wasn't completely
it wasn't there yet
at that point.
Yeah.
2 was kind of the point where it like fully showed itself.
Do you remember when they got to the end of making Assassin's Creed 1 and realized the game was like 3 hours long, so they hid 400 flags in the environments?
Flags and feathers.
You're like it's got so much content.
But that level of like sneaking and detection and stealthing and just all of that was just like, oh, this whole era is about this. This whole era becomes about this from now on.
The worst, I know this is retreading old ground, but you know what the worst thing about the Ubisoft formula is? Is that it's a good formula. It's just it's not a good formula 4 times a year. For 10, 15 years.
Yeah, the thing I always talk about with Assassin's Creed isn't that I like I didn't grow to hate them out of just like fuck these, I bounced off. I grew exhausted of them. You know, like I played them and cared about them and then got tired of what they were doing. It was a slow burnout as opposed to a sudden rip.
Yeah.